we will get started. The first question is from George, not George Footium, a different George. Any news on the Footium Community Fund? I know I've applied and I hope others do. Yeah, this is my bad with the beta and everything. I've been pretty busy with sorting that all out and getting the league tables and everything, so haven't looked at the Community Fund for a week or so, so I'll be looking at that, George, and I will be getting back to you ASAP. I had a quick look this morning and saw your application, so yeah, we'll be getting onto that ASAP. And we actually do have a grant approved, which we will be announcing tomorrow. So keep your eyes peeled on that. That's an exciting one.
Very exciting. What a tease.
Yeah, good tease. The next one is also from George. What is a realistic time frame for the Footium token? When can we see a release date, and will there be an ICO? And I'm going to pass this to you, George.
Thank you very much. So the token, it's something we've always been quite cautious on, and I think that's gone well because some other projects that have launched and kind of added a token before the product was ready and hasn't gone very well. So it's still something where it's in the back of our minds, but we're more focused on sort of releasing a really good game before starting to think about things like that. So no sort of further updates there, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and I think the community can see that as well because this AMA had a lot less when token. So I think the community can see that. Next one is from George as well. In a statistic from September 2022, 80% plus of Web3 people involved do much of their work from mobile. Is there a plan to make the game more mobile friendly? And we gave this one to Rob, who's our product lead, and he said that the plan is definitely to make the game more mobile friendly for the next beta. I think we've seen from this beta that a lot of people want to access their team, their results on the go, so it's super important we get that sorted. And this will involve us passing back through the pages that already exist and making sure they work on mobile and ensuring all pages moving forward will always be mobile friendly. Cool.
Yeah, I think it's an important flow as well because I know that sometimes when it's just changing your team a bit before the day's game, but you're out or traveling and not have access to a laptop or computer, definitely be helpful to have that mobile access. So it is a priority before the next beta. Well, for the next beta, but it will be done way before the next beta, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something like checking your team results and stuff. Like, I want to be able to go on it like I'm going on FootMob or something on a different app and checking my team and checking to see if Swart Rangers are losing. And yeah, I think that'll be good. Cool. The next question is from Bert. And this beta, a Ghost Bot team of an average rating of 15 managed to grab 3 wins and 5 draws against 65 rated teams in 19 games. The team even conceded less than 4 other goals compared to teams in the league. To me, this seems the match engine isn't working as it should. What are your thoughts on this? How will you make sure that people who spend time and money to improve their team are rewarded in most matches against weaker teams? Allowing for some variance, of course. Give this to you, George.
Yeah, so I think, obviously, off the bat, I think, there was some work to do on the match sim as shown by the beta, and that's exactly why we run the betas, is to get the feedback, and it's been super valuable having that from everyone. And I think, obviously, we wouldn't launch the game until the match sim was working correctly, so there would never be a scenario where people are there shouldn't be a scenario where people are spending money. I know some people did, but that was not encouraged. But yeah, I think it's definitely something we're working on. We've kind of done a retro on the match sim and have a good understanding of what is working well, what needs to be improved, and also have a kind of roadmap in terms of improving the whole match sim user experience as well. You should have hopefully seen today that we released the key events, which is something we mocked up internally pretty quickly, just to get people's first input on that, but it's not necessarily exactly what we'll go with at launch. Maybe people want more information, less. So it's something we'll continue to iterate on up to launch and also beyond launch, because obviously launch is a big point for us, but it doesn't mean that no more features are being added or improved. It's going to be a process of continuous improvement for Footium. But yeah, we did take this kind of very much on board, and we've been looking into it, and we had our data scientist Marco kind of sim 100 matches, or 200 actually, of a 15 rated squad versus a 60 rated squad, and it came out with 11% win, 23% draws, and 66% losses, which roughly matches up to the stats you put there. So it worked as intended, but I think that comes into where the kind of specifications we put as to how often a 15 rated team versus a 60 rated team should win, and clearly that's needs to be tweaked. And Marco also gave the example of, if it was kind of betting odds, that game would look a bit like, in terms of those win rates, Juventus versus Nantes. Nantes, I don't know how you say it, in the Europa League in February. But I wouldn't say they're 45 ratings apart, obviously, if you're going out of 100. So therefore, we should definitely bring those win rates down for such a low-rated team. And hopefully, once the kind of next beta as well, once conditions functioning as intended, we'll have much more kind of areas that punish zombie managers as well. So would it be even fewer wins for that team than in this beta?
That was such a specific match. Juventus versus Nantes in the Europa League.
No, Marco gave it. He's obviously Italian, so maybe that was...
Yeah, Del Piero is his favourite player. Cool. So next question's from Vinny. How deep into micromanagement is the team willing to go? When playing Football Manager, every detail matters, be it training schedule, developing a trait that suits a player. If the game gets down to just picking the best crops from each youth intake and picking a general training schedule where everyone gets to develop their players to more or less the same, it becomes somewhat superficial to me. I'll give this to you, Archie.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, you've mentioned the game there, Football Manager, but I think sort of all the football games like that have got to that level of depth over a very long time, and they didn't start that way. So the question of how deep, I think that will be a spectrum for us as a game. I think that over time that may change. We may go more depth with some releases and less depth with other updates as we get feedback from users. I think initial position, I don't see a world where we're not a more casual experience than a game like FM or similar management games. I'd actually liken the development of a game like that to something like Total War, which is one of my other favourite games, and I play relatively regularly. And if you look at the depth in the new Total War games, it's incredible compared to something like Rome Total War, which was released, I think, in like 2004. That is an incredibly good game to me. And I think it's possibly the highest rated one. I can't remember off Metacritic off the top of my head. But my point to say that depth does not necessarily mean improvement. I think what we need to be aware of is the feedback from the community and to develop as we go. When we bring features in, we're going to target them at what we think is a depth appropriate to the rest of the game and the state of the rest of the game. And there's no point dropping one in that's incredibly in-depth when it doesn't work in comparison with the others. So where do I see us position ourselves? Well, I think it's definitely more casual than something like FM or the more recent Total Wars or the more recent Civilizations. But over time, that depth will increase and that depth will grow as people become more accustomed with the game, as users become more aware of what a Footium experience is. It's just naturally going to happen. So yeah, please don't expect massive, in-depth and analytical training schedules from day one, but that's not to say that you won't see them develop over time.
Cool. I think massive analytical training schedules and stuff would only make me look like a worse manager. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Well, I'd also argue that some of those games do what they do really well is offer the depth to the people that are willing to do them.
Yeah.
But also offer a more casual experience to other people. So I think as our depth does increase, that will be a challenge that we will look to manage as well, where if people really want to go down to a granular level, they may be able to get an edge in certain areas, but we want to maintain that kind of openness to new users, because I think that's one challenge that many of these games have really faced, is that how do you onboard new people? I think FM's a good example of that, in that the majority of people I meet who play FM and that are younger than me are mobile players. And the mobile experience is obviously is a lot less intense than full fat FM.
Yeah, no, that's very true. It's very true. Cool, I'll head straight back to you, Archie, with the next question from Questo. Will the player match performance ratings generated for each player be directly tied into the match engine's actions assigned to each player? Quite wordy, but have you discussed how the ratings will be weighted from this, e.g. passes, goals, assists, crosses? How much will each be worth in a rating out of 10 for performance? I'm guessing if player ratings are tied to the engine, they will be one of the last components added, as the match engine needs to be airtight before it reflects a player's performance.
Yeah, I think I'll start with your last point, Questo, about that. Firstly, no, in the sense of to yourselves, the community, yes, it will probably be one of the last components that comes in as finalised and finished, but we're already testing that internally, how ratings are generated based on the current events that players are participating in. But as you alluded to there, without the engine being airtight, it's very difficult to balance that entirely without bringing in the new features that are missing at the moment, such as things like injuries and red cards and bad tackles and penalties at a more complex level. And each of those features as well is going to grow over time and become more in depth. So we might balance the player ratings now, and that will be completely worthless once we've developed everything else. But what you alluded to with your tying of the actions, I mean, that is the approach we'll be taking. I don't see another design really, where we will look at each individual contribution from a player and we will look at the probability of them doing it well, and then we will obviously have a random element of how they actually did it based on their abilities and the situation. And if they outperform that, then they are performing well, and it's your job as a manager to identify that based on the ratings we provide. So that's the idea. In terms of how they'll be weighted, I can't tell you the exact way right now. And what I can tell you is that we will want to be transparent with that because we don't want to hide that away. So I would hope that we will publish those at the time to say, this is why this guy's got this rating. That's our job as game developers and designers, to show you guys this guy's performing because of these reasons. So I can't tell you exactly those ratings now because I don't know them, because they will change, but those weightings will be known and part of the Footium game experience.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait for in-match player ratings. Cool, so we've got a few more from Questo. His next one is: the only issue I've ever had with the team is your over-ambition, which is also a compliment. This can drive customer expectations, notably on deadlines not being met, which in hindsight were likely not achievable from the outset. Honest answers only here. Please don't do a Sunak politician answer. Based on the upcoming code audit, the key features not tested, the bugs currently present in what is being tested, do you think a Q1 launch is still feasible? Personally think we are 4 or 5 seasons away from implementing new aspects. Most, I'd imagine, want a good, well-rounded finished project and are happy to wait until the game is complete and all roadmap features are in and tested before launch. I'll give this one to you, George.
It's been my best Rishi Sunak impression. No. Yeah, I think obviously this bit has kind of made it clear that there are still a lot of work to do in terms of getting the game to a point where we're ready to do the launch and then continue improving afterwards, obviously. And it's not going to be in Q1 of this year. I don't think it's necessarily like 4 or 5 beta tests away. I think that the beta tests are really, really helpful in terms of getting a temperature check. It forces us to do stuff like the integration of all the different parts, which is better to do that sort of before a beta than before the full launch, obviously. And it's really helpful to get the feedback on what kind of expectations people are around rating difference to win rates and what they want from condition and what features they think are really missing on the match sim UX experience, such as key events, as a lot of people said. But I think that now from this beta, we've got a lot of really good feedback and we have a clear idea of what still needs to be done in order for us to launch the full game, what do we want to do afterwards, and we intend to sort of go away, get all of that done as to kind of the current feedback, and then obviously do a final beta to test that all, and then if that's well, or there's not major changes to make, then we'll be able to launch following that. That doesn't mean we won't do other types of testing, such as like performance tests. If we add a new feature that we want to make sure we get user feedback on, then we might even do just like a very short test or just with a few kind of people just to get their community vibe on it. So obviously keeping you guys in the loop, but like every beta is a bit of dev time to set up and then run, and things go down, and it is a bit of a distraction. So it's kind of finding the balance between having user impact and actually acting on that impact, on that feedback, sorry. So but yeah, as always, our goal is to release a kind of well-rounded product. I wouldn't say finished, because there's always stuff we want to keep adding, but there's some stuff that's much easier to do for launch, and then other features which can be added after and don't have a major effect on the game. So that's where the kind of road mapping comes in.
Cool. Questo's got another question for you, George. More for the long term, with a team of 16, once the game launches, how are wages going to be funded and prize pools at the same time? Unless some of the team are on fixed contracts for design and not the upkeep of the game, I'd imagine it's a massive outlay that might not be covered with in-game purchases, unless the release of more teams at some point when servers are at the level needed.
Yeah, so the prize pools aren't funded by like Footium's money. It's as I know there's the prize pool article somewhere on Medium, but obviously it's based on in-game spending as well as some stuff around sponsorship. But yeah, in terms of the company, it generally is as a startup, you don't aim to be profitable as soon as the product launches. Well, some do, but most kind of technology startups similar to us wouldn't aim for that. And it's more of a sense of show that we can launch an amazing product and that people love it. And then we can go and raise more funding from investors similar to our seed round, and then continue to build an amazing game and eventually get to a stage where it's profitable. If we were trying to kind of go for profitability that early, that would mean a much smaller team and not being able to grow, to kind of execute as fast as we'd like to. So it's kind of, that's generally the way startups work in this space. But yeah, I think that obviously conditional on that is producing a good game, showing really good metrics on people's users' involvement in the game, on growth as well as new people joining the game, and community engagement in and around Footium, like the stuff you guys do on Twitter and the community projects are all very good things that make it an even more sort of attractive prospect for investors, because it shows how dedicated and committed the community is to a project. So yeah.
Awesome. The next one is from John. It's, have you got an update on the tokenomics? Back to you again, George.
Similar as before. Did we miss a question about which blockchain?
Oh yeah, and you can do these in one. Have you decided which layer Footium will launch on?
Yeah, token as before, not really a key focus right now. Not until we have a solid product live and running, and even then maybe longer. But the layer, we've had very good conversations. We spoke to most of the major teams in the space, done lots of research, got other people's opinions around their launch experience, dev support, user experience, but nothing. We don't really want to announce or kind of make that final decision until we necessarily need to, because maybe something changes. Maybe they have a big hack or crash and we've committed and then we change it. There's no kind of pressure to do that right now, but we will obviously do that ahead of launch by at least a few weeks, if not months. So yeah, kind of not decided, but we have all the research and decision stuff there, but we don't have to make the decision yet, so it doesn't make sense to announce anything like that until we need to.
Awesome. John's got a few questions, so let's go for his next one. For you, Jordan, before the next beta, can the team confirm what is switched on, stamina, attributes, etc.? We all spent a bit of time sorting out players with certain attributes, but as it turned out, it was not needed in this beta.
Yeah, absolutely. Like with the new process, and we're integrating versioning at the moment. There's a lot of challenges that we face running up to this beta, where we're integrating the three different components, two of them brand new. In there's the front end and the match sim, and then obviously the back end as well. Ultimately, certain things fell through the cracks, but like I said, we're reintegrating like a proper versioning system back into the development process, and it'll be clear what's switched on, what's not, and we'll make sure to effectively communicate that to the community.
Awesome. Cool. John's next question is for you, George. An updated roadmap to align with current project timelines.
Yeah, so I think, as covered before, still intend to do a final beta before launch, but unlikely to be in Q1 in terms of the launch.
Okay.
No, it won't be in Q1.
Cool. And John's final question isn't really a question, but his question is, I wanted to ask more questions than Questo. And you have beaten Questo, but Hibby is on the way, and Hibby has a lot of questions. So you're not the champion forever. Next question from LAR Syndicate. When transfer market, George?
So yeah, as a feature, it's something we spec'd out. We haven't finished working on yet. There's obviously a number of things across Web3 and backend and front end. But yeah, it's not something that I would necessarily is one of the features that necessarily needs aggressive testing on a user front. Obviously, we will test, but it's not something like the match sim, which is a very, very complex thing to build and requires balancing and user feedback, etc. Transfer market is something that's been done many times before and is more of a, does it work? Yes, we'll still test it, but wouldn't be a priority, I would say. But obviously, it's a key part of the game, but it's not a super complex problem in the sense of it's never been done before.
Awesome. The next one is from Mozza. Why is Scotland not a nationality in game yet? And when will Scotland be a nationality in game? And to start with, we only added 16 nations, and we only added real footballing nations at the moment. No, I feel bad.
Yeah.
I feel bad, wasn't it? We looked at basically rankings, and unfortunately Scotland aren't quite there yet. But in all seriousness, we are going to add more nationalities through future youth intakes, and maybe just for Mozza and Hibby, we'll push it to 32 nations for launch and add Scotland.
I'm not sure they can sneak in the 32. We'll have to.
We'll have to check the rankings.
Research.
Really good. Cool. Next one from Catalinic for you, George. Is the company secured in terms of funding to keep the project going?
Yeah, we've still got plenty of runway to execute on what we have planned and launch a great game. But as I said earlier, as with most startups, there's a process of receiving some money, executing and showing that you are a good team and you can build this product that you've sort of sold the vision of to the investors, and then kind of speccing out what you want to do next and going to raise funding for that.
Awesome. Next one is from Suze. If it all goes to plan and all 3060 teams play in the next beta, will we be paying in our club's proper divisions and leagues, or will it be related to promotions and relegations in the beta? I'll give this to you, Jordan.
Yeah. A lot of those details haven't been decided yet, but we want to see what you guys think first, and really happy to take input there before making any decisions on the coming beta. But ideally, 3060 clubs. Like a lot of you saw the issues that we had running up to the beta, and which delayed the beta. And as a result, there's been a big overhaul in the back end, with the goal of not just scaling, but we want to try and be able to scale to, in theory, an infinite number of games, right? If you have an infinite number of servers. But we did try to really take that startup mindset of you've got your product, let's try and push it to its extreme, and then you break it, and then we have to sort of look back and think how can we re-engineer it to suit its needs. But yeah, we're in a place where we want to run the 3060 clubs. We're in a position where we in theory should be able to scale to the 3060, but of course internal testing before we get there.
Awesome, thank you. Now we've got Hibby's big flurry of 9 questions, which starts with again asking about Scottish nationalities, and we'll come back to that one when Scotland win a game of football. The next one, what will the supply be for the legendary and rare players? How many rare players have been given out already? Is there further details and benefits and potential? I'll start with this and then pass to you, George. Around 125 rare players have been won through quizzes, score competitions, World Cup, and all of those other stuff so far, and there'll still be some more opportunities in the next few months.
Yeah, and I think important to distinguish between rares and legendaries, because obviously rares are players which can come through academies in any club in the whole Footium ecosystem. Obviously, more likely in the higher up divisions, but any club, even down to Div 8, can get rare players through their academies, and whereas legendary players are kind of auctioned off at the start of each season. And yeah, in terms of potential benefits and costs, I think rare players are 4-star potential, so they have the potential to be very, very good players. Obviously, they don't just become very good players overnight. They have to be given game time, given kind of correct training, making sure they're not being played till they're absolutely shattered, so they get injured, etc. So that's an important part of it. It's not just you get a rare player and you're going to get promoted. And there's also the aspect of kind of balancing it. So rare players are still rare. It's not every team that has a rare player, but anyone still has a chance of getting them through the academy. So it's effectively a balancing problem. Marco will be working on that specifically, but it also comes across all kind of types of players with potentials. 3.5-star potential players are only just not rare players, so I still have the potential to be very, very good still. And obviously they can come through the academies as well as 0.5-star terrible players, but that is the look of the draw.
Yeah, getting those rare players that come through that lovely graphic we've got when you've got Academy Reveal, a rare player in a debate is going to hit different. Next one from Hibby's a duplicate on tokens. I think we've talked about that a few times. And then the next one is, we are passionate about the game and want to help you make the best game possible. Focus groups could be used to really get the feedback and use a heartbeat of the project. And yeah, this is a really good idea and something that we've been discussing a lot recently. Simon, our design league, really wants something like this so we can get like rapid feedback on designs that he creates for certain pages and new features that we want to test. But it's super important that we get diversity of opinion in testing. We obviously don't just want the most active people in the Discord. We need people that haven't played football management games, people from Web3, or like a big variation. And also people that might not be as vocal but are very invested in the game. So yeah, it's definitely something we're looking into, and we'll obviously still have the betas and performance testing for the wider community, but an initial sounding board for the team in a focus group style would be a really cool thing. So yeah, it's definitely something we're looking into. Next from Hibby is, regarding the team size, what is the current setup and plan going forward? Are you a little bit stretched, and if so, where? Give this to you, Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a really good place with the team size. As like already highlighted earlier, we're a team of 16 now, and that stretches across sort of ops, design, marketing, community, front end development, back end development, match simulation, data science. So like for the first time, sort of towards the end of last year, we've really got like a complete team together with a broad range of skill sets, which we can really execute this product. In terms of being stretched, like yeah, always stretched, right? It's normal for startups in the gaming industry. We're trying to build a very ambitious product, and so naturally we're going to be stretched. Always love to have 10 more developers, because this, as you guys have talked about, like in terms of like the depth. There's a lot of depth that we can go into now, but it requires a lot more resource. That said, we do have the skill sets in the team to plug the gaps. So like an example, like Marco in the team, data scientist. Marco is currently working across like game analytics, the game economy, and the match simulation. And in an ideal world, right, you have someone who works on each of those areas and can really perfect them. But at the same time, like we've got someone who's really talented in that and can work across those domains and really bring them together. So there's lots of advantages there as well. And as well, like the longer that we're working together, the more that we understand each other as a team, we become more efficient. And that's something that we've definitely found, like moving into the new year as well. And now that we've got the beta, and the beta really was like the bringing together of those two new components, which was the front end and the match sim. And I think the issues that we've had in the beta and the beta being delayed has highlighted the growing pains there. As a result, like it's brought us together. And again, like the longer that we're working together, the more efficient that we are becoming in being able to execute and build Footium. So it's a really exciting place that we're in, and really looking forward to 2023.
Yeah, we've now got 100 chemistry on Ultimate Team if we run it. Next from Hibby, what is the plan for marketing and promotion, all organic through the community, or is there more planned? We've actually been working on a big marketing plan for the whole year this week, which is very exciting, obviously with launch happening, and I'm not even going to give any details, so you should just be excited. So keep your eyes out, there's going to be marketing. Next, what were you going to add to that, George? Going to add to
I was just enjoying the answer.
Next from Hibby, what are the timelines for full launch? Do you expect some features not to be in at launch, especially a system manager rental system? Because I would love to test and give feedback on that. George?
Yeah, so in terms of the features to be in at launch, I think we can definitely, and this, I guess, probably the better way to take these questions is start to talk about what we intend to have in at launch and beta, and what we'd like to test and what might become further down the road. So we'll try and keep kind of update a roadmap on that to keep you guys more in the loop as to when in terms of order of features we should expect things. I think trying to move away from that aspect of giving exact deadlines, because as Questo mentioned, that can be a bit frustrating if what on our side is very, very hard to predict in terms of these are entirely novel products. We didn't know if the integration would take, or we assumed like kind of original thought would take a week, and then it ends up taking a lot longer because it's much more complex due to a number of factors, and then the kind of issues with having loads and loads of games simultaneously, having to to make the back end more scalable. But that's why we do the betas to run into these issues now rather than just before launch. So yeah, we'll try and get more information on a kind of feature roadmap out as well.
Awesome. Next from Hibby is, I really feel like you need to be able to change a club name. Will be massive for long-term success of Footium. Not many people will want to hear about a team called Bat for and. The ability allows a brand or influencer to be onboarded easier. This should be something you can pay to and is limited. Is this possible? I don't think, in my opinion, you should be able to change your club name. I understand that there are some clubs that are called Bat for and this has actually annoyed Roland quite a lot recently, who's made an extensive list of names that he thinks need slightly tweaking, so that we might have a look into something like that. But I think kind of the heart and soul of Footium are these names and these badges and all the content and lore around them. So I think it would be kind of sad to have the opportunity to move away from that. I don't know if anyone has anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think so much shade being thrown at Bat for and at the moment. I'd be livid.
Yeah. Can we get the Bat for and donut on now on stage?
Him and Hibby are gonna fall out. But yeah, I think it's because personally, like if I don't know, KSI came and started playing Footium and called his club KSI FC, I'd be like, oh. But if he's managing Bat for and people can kind of get behind that, there's merch, etc. That isn't necessarily tied to the KSI brand, but is kind of impacted by it, then that would be cool. So yeah, if KSI is listening, which I think I kind of see him in the audience, you know.
I was going to say, are you leaking that KSI is coming to Footium?
I wish, yeah. Maybe soon. But yeah, I think it's open to discussion, but I think a lot of the team are also, we've seen a lot of success of people building these brands around clubs, so it's not something we'd want to necessarily change.
Yeah, completely fair.
Yeah, and as well on that point, any changing of any clubs that or any club data that people own, it's like that ultimately is the final decision of the club owner.
Yeah.
If the Bat for and owner wouldn't, let's say we made a list of names that we wanted to change and tweak, because let's say we weren't happy with Bat for and, like, well, it really comes down to the owner of Bat for and whether that name gets changed or not.
Yeah.
Let's find the owner of Bat for and. I'm going to do it after this AMA.
Fridge United.
Yeah, we still don't know it's Fridge United. The last question from Hibby is for you, George. What can be added to the core game loop outside of FFL activity? Any ideas already? No pressure, just future stuff.
Not off the top of my head. I think if you mean something more like mini games, not really. We're more focused on the core game at the moment. Happy to entertain ideas and get input from other people, but we also don't want to make it a super time-consuming game for users who don't want to necessarily have to do these sort of more grind mechanics. So not a core focus at the moment.
Cool. We're on to Dylan now. He's got a couple of questions. With the auctions, can it be looked into that people like to have their rares they've won entered an auction? I think what you would do there is just sell them. You can put them up for an auction on OpenSea at launch. That's going to be the easiest way to do that. Has there been further discussion regarding substitutes? Some of the communities agreed they'd like to revote on the opportunity for newcomers to have a say. It is something we discussed internally, not about having a revote, but just this 5 votes, 3 votes. I don't believe 5 votes is real football, which is my personal opinion. I know Archie said the same to me before the call, so it's definitely something we need to consider. But right now, at the moment, condition and morale and stuff isn't in its final place, so I feel like having this debate right now isn't the right time, but it's definitely something we can look at coming back to.
You said 5 votes or 3 votes, not subs.
Oh, I'm thinking about the vote. 5 subs is not real football. That's my opinion. Will all of the key features be tested in the beta before launch, i.e. transfer market, training, stadium upgrades, or will this come after the launch and the basics have been fixed? George?
So I'd say generally all key features will be tested, but that depends how you define key. Ideally, we test every single thing in the game pre-launch in some way. Either it's a beta test or some kind of performance tests again for specific features that we want to look into. And obviously, even after launch, any new features, we'll aggressively test them before they go anywhere near the game. So everything will get user testing and internal testing. And I don't know if there's anything extra to add on that. But yeah, as I mentioned before, things like the transfer market, we will test, but it's not something that we need to get perhaps as much user feedback on, apart from it works or doesn't work. than something such as condition. How much does it affect your players? Should it be more? Should it be less? How should recovery work, etc.? Not how should it work, but how effective should recovery be?
Awesome. Cool. The next question's from Patter, who I believe you spoke to on the phone last week, George. He's asked, how did you attract investment from Chris Smalling?
I wish I did speak to Pat on the phone. How do we attract investment from Chris Smalling? So I just slid into his DMs on Twitter. It was like, Chris, come on. No. One of our investors in the round, or who's going to participate in the round, said that they had a contact with Chris Smalling. Obviously, Chris is a very sophisticated investor in terms of having his own investment fund now. Good, I think it's For Good is called, and he invests in a lot of sort of vegan companies and climate responsible companies. And I think it's just a very obvious kind of synergy as soon as we jumped on a call with him as well after the introduction, that he loves playing games like this. A lot of footballers do, especially when you've got European matches and you're flying from match to match. You've got a lot of time to play games that you can get really invested in, and obviously the competitive nature of footballers as well, of wanting to beat other people. So it made quite a lot of attention. I think grabbed his attention a bit, and he's happy to join the round.
Cool. Next one's from Enna for you, George. Will the league payout system change at any point?
Potentially. It's not currently planned to change for now, but obviously we're always open to feedback and ideas. If there's anything specific you think should be restructured or changed, then open to hearing it. But if people want to learn more about that, check out the prize pools article on the Medium.
Yeah, and we can put that in some important links, because I think it can be hard to find. Next from Freak Lion, are the stadium rights and other advertisements going to be available at launch? They're not key for launch, but we're super excited about the possibilities here, so they're not going to be in for launch, but soon after they will, and I can't wait to call my stand the Jerry Green stand, which Jordan will not be happy with, because he claims that Jerry Green was made in High Top, but Jerry Green was made in Newcastle, so we'll have a Jerry Green stand.
It's absolutely ludicrous. He's a High Top legend, High Top through and through.
No, not at all. Next one is from Tony, King in the Castle. This is for you, Archie, and I also would love to know the answer. How can I stop my club from losing to bottom of the table squads? I am the bottom of the table squad, but I just want to know how to stop losing.
Well, I'm ninth place now, so I don't.
So you're not the right person to ask.
Well, for this beta, the idea was to have you guys looking at condition in your team selection. So how you manage that was the main goal here. So the guys or people who are playing who managed to manage their team selection and condition, in theory, should have come out on top. Now, what ended up happening was, I think we probably got our balance slightly wrong with those systems. There's slight issues in both of them. Firstly, there was the visual issues with condition, which was that condition wasn't visible until you resumed the match. So people were making tactical changes that until the match was ready to go, and then it refreshed and the visuals came through. So people were getting conflicting information there. So I think that led to initial things. And then secondly, the second of those systems was how we rate you based on your team selection and your formation picked. So we were cautious there with doing analysis too early before we had enough data to work out whether there were exploits or things like that. And we actually did some last week, and got our first round of data, and you'll be pleased to see, if you go to my team Hair Rovers, that my last 4 games have been very good results, because obviously I know the dirty secrets that everyone doesn't know. Now, so in answer to your question, if we had managed to balance it perfectly, the answer would have been on team selection and position and condition. We obviously made some mistakes, which is what's going to happen. That's the nature of a beta. So the answer is, how do you win? You try and play to the rules of the game. We have to make sure that we ensure the rules of the game are balanced and fair and public. On the flip side of that, as we saw with the example from earlier, there is also variance, and variance is insane at some levels. And we have to work out what level of variance we want, because obviously at the heart of it, we control the odds and the randomness of the engine. It's not like real football. We can deter, if we want the better team to win every game, we can make that happen, but we have to pick a line somewhere where there is this element of variance, and we have to work out whether you are happy with that. It's very hard to stand here and get an accurate answer of whether you're happy as users of that without having all the features in, and without having tactics, and without having all the controls you need to give that answer. So it will be similar to the other features, a give and take relationship where we try and get it right, and sometimes get it wrong. So that was a long answer. The short answer is managing your team and your condition. But obviously that wasn't exactly how it worked out.
Yeah, and I think in terms of sort of for launch, the goal is to have obviously a system which allows variation and there is some variance, but also means that it's not just like one formation which is the best one to play and everyone knows it, because it depends on your team makeup. Like if you have loads of really quality wingers, then it obviously makes sense to play a team like that. But if you don't, and you've kind of more opted for left mid, right mids, or playing completely through the center, then there's variance in the kind of potential strategies you as a manager could employ.
Exactly that, and that's why there are issues, because it's not as trivial as just looking at your team and saying that's a better team. Our rating system has to have complexity to it, and that's where sometimes there are problems, and that's what we need to look at across the board about which teams overperformed, which teams underperformed, and how much of that is down to just variance of randomness, and how much of that is actually down to issues within our rating system.
Awesome. I'm coming straight back to you, Archie. In terms of the next beta, will we see more aspects turned on? Cards, injuries, player ratings, player team stats, morale, etc.?
Yeah, so the game elements, I'll call them match components, I guess, of a football match, as you'd expect. Things like cards, injuries, they will definitely be in the next beta. There's not a chance that we won't have them. The other things, I'm not sure whether I can give a definitive answer, yes or no, right now. The reason is balance and working them out. To use an example of a match component would be injuries. Like, what do injuries mean? If a player gets injured in the match, are they injured for multiple games? How is that going to affect a player over the course of the whole season? So we need to get these things in so that we can try and understand those and try and get an idea of how do we balance the other features of the game. Is it really fair that you would jump in, say you've got Messi, and Messi breaks his leg and is out for the entirety of a Footium season? We probably don't think so, but we don't necessarily know. So we need to start working those decisions out. The other stuff like the stats and the ratings and things like morale are really important to be introduced into a balance engine. At the moment, without the components that make up the whole game, like injuries and stuff, it's very difficult to then say, oh, we'll build them on top when they're not showing a complete picture. Player ratings would be an example of that. To go into sort of our development over the last few months is we've taken the engine from sort of quite basic. It had four events before, and it would not simulate a full game. It would simulate the probability of a team winning, and based on that, it would inject some goals, and it would say, "Well done, you've won." And then if you'd made your changes, that would change the result. And it was really great, but it was quite simplistic. Now we're looking at a match simulator that has 44 unique events, and the game runs for a full 90 minutes if we want it to. If we ran it for 180 minutes, I'm sure you'd get a lot more goals. And we also managed to strip that down to run for 30 minutes and present relatively realistic results. I mean, if you look across all the match leagues that are running, you're looking at quite consistent results. Okay, I agree that we could have been better with better teams beating others, but that's something we need to work on and refine. And we were hampered a little bit by the infrastructure problems that have been touched on before, which led to sort of some of those things not going out. But the main goal for this was to deliver a 90-minute match, obviously presented in 30-minute form, and that is what we've done. Moving forward, it will be making sure we've got all of the components in, such as injuries, cards, and targeting the delivery of information and the sort of match experience to the users, because I think we've also realised that they're not up to spec. But I think we would have realised that a lot earlier without this sort of infrastructure problems we had with getting the whole system running. But look forward to sharing some of those sort of match experience developments going forward, and hopefully giving you all a more exciting match experience.
Yeah, no, it's all really exciting stuff, all the work that's been done on that. Next one's for you, George. Would another closed beta be worthwhile next, rather than a full beta with all 3,060 clubs, as there might be some ghost teams? Give more focus with active players looking for bugs, possibly a full beta after that.
Maybe. I think if we can run a full beta there in terms of the infrastructure side and performance, then we should, because there's still a lot of people that applied for this beta, and obviously it was limited due to performance stuff and wanting to slowly scale up through that. But if we can get it working with all 3,000 clubs, then I think we'd prefer to do that. And like, the more testers, the better, if we can support that. But if not, or we want to do a kind of mini beta in between, perhaps, maybe that would be not everyone, but generally the goal is to do a full 3,000 club beta for the last one before launch.
Cool. The next question is from Pata, and it's very long. It's basically talking about how will Division 8s rise up, how they will rise up through the divisions, how will they compete with clubs with a lot of money, and everything like that. And Rob's given us an answer for that. It is, the current academy design is that the higher divisions are weighted to get better players, but all clubs have the potential to get a player of any rarity. It is the likelihood of this happening which increases up the divisions. A Division 8 person could get the next Messi come through, it's just less likely. This all feeds into the Division 8 economy. Sell Messi for loads, spend to go up, prize pools increase. More likely, a three-star potential player is still a great player, kind of like a non-league club, getting a championship level team. In real life, only benefits, only club. And I'm not sure at the end of this, to be honest, George. Do you know?
Yeah, I think I added these notes at the end. I was trying to get across that as like, obviously a rare player is just 4-star potential. It's possible for every club. But even like a 3-star potential player, if you're getting that through in Division 8, that's perhaps a championship level player. So still worth quite a bit of money for that Div 8 club. And if they were to sell it, and if they were to sell it, then it's likely they would be reinvesting that money into their club and buying players and upgrading stadiums, which then flows back into the prize pools for other Div 8 teams to win. So as always, it's a balance between how you kind of spend your money as a club and also how you manage the team. Because some teams might spend loads of money, but the manager's very absent or doesn't know what they're doing, so they still don't go up. And some teams might go up without spending any money at all because the manager's an absolute legend. So it's a balance there. But yeah, I think it obviously makes more sense for Div 1 teams to have a much higher chance of getting a rare player than a Div 8 team. But having that chance is very similar to real world football, in that you do get some absolute stars coming through the lower league academies.
Yeah, no, 100%. We've got another question from Questo for you, Archie. How will the player improvement curve work? When player attributes and ratings increase, how often will this show? Will progress throughout the season be visible, or will it be at the end of the season it shows?
Yeah, so I think this is something, it's not necessarily up in the air, but there's definitely, it's not 100% defined of what is going to happen here. But the current plan is that player growth will be calculated, sorry, lost my words for a second, will go along two sort of curves and parameters, which is their age and their experience. So their age obviously is a given, and that will vary for different players for different positions. I think there was a graph recently I saw shared that was showing that the optimum age to be a footballer is 27 or something across all positions. But obviously it changes depending on that. You see goalkeepers play a lot longer, so that will be one of the trends that they're measured against. And then their experience, which is sort of how much they've been played, depending on very much on what the feature of training looks like, but how much training has an impact and how much they've been trained, and the quality of team they've played for, and the quality of opposition, and all of that will build into sort of their growth. And yeah, and that's it basically. And it's looking at that as a fundamental starting point and moving on from there, and then seeing how that yields and what that looks like. One thing that's really important for us to do is start to be able to sim over multiple seasons and work out how these players will develop, and that is something that having someone like Mark on the team is so critical for. He's an absolute wizard with figures and with graphs and with plotting, and it's incredible to see. So it'll be really interesting to see those kind of projections, and then it will be refining the feature and the features that surround it, like training from that.
Awesome. Next question is from George. For George, we know that the traditional game creators keep going on as they sell new versions of the game and add-ons. What is Footium's way of doing things to ensure the company has enough funds and cash flow to keep the game rolling for years to come?
Yeah, really good question, and it's something that we often it's been one of the, I think, main reasons that one, our investors have kind of liked our design for this, in that it's kind of a new business model for games. So you have the traditional one, which is like a Football Manager-esque game where you pay 50 quid to buy the game each year, and that's all the monetization around that for the game studio. Then you have kind of FIFA, who moved into a sort of hybrid-y one where you buy FIFA, and then a lot of people will spend a lot of money on FIFA Ultimate Team, which led to them making something ridiculous like $10 million a day. But in a game like that, it's users spending all this money and continue to put more money into the game as it progresses, and then it kind of they don't get anything back from that, and it just at the end of the season or even up to the kind of now with the FIFA market crashing pretty heavily, it's sort of they never really get anything back from that, and all the benefits just go straight to the company as in EA Sports. Whereas with Footium, you have that aspect of there's a way for people to continue to kind of invest in their club and for the game studio to continue to make revenue and put more development into the game. But users also are getting return from that. So it's not just they put money in and effort and then that just becomes worthless after a year and you buy the new game and do that again. It's more, if you're putting money into your club, it's more of an investment over the longer term, and you can even get rewarded from that in terms of promotion, in terms of winning in-game benefits, and in terms of winning actual money as well. So it's quite a nice evolution, I feel, in that it still benefits the game studio a bit more, but also benefits the users, which has been missing in games in the past.
Awesome. Next question's from Pesh. How does the marketing strategy look, and are you planning to get athletes to get you some more exposure, and will holders get IRL utilities such as all-inclusive to football or something similar? And we've got 7 footballers on board already, which is awesome. We're always trying to attract more through the love of the concept. It's great to see Sean Wright-Phillips giving big Nigel de Jong some banter a few seasons ago, and that's what we want to create more of, that rivalry. And George touched on it earlier. Footballers just want to win and have that bragging rights over their mates, so it's quite easy to sell them on the vision of Footium, which is always exciting. And yeah, we'll definitely be looking to host further community events after the success of our last one at Leyton Orient. Great day out, even with the 0-0. Next question's from Zekin, and I don't even want to read it, but I've got to do it. Quick question for the team: have you ever seen a side as bad as Newcastle's ever? And I'll give this to you, George, because I don't want to comment.
I'd say, as a Lincoln City fan, Grimsby come pretty close, but I think Newcastle might just tip them to that one.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Just on the previous point, in terms of having athletes involved, I think it is obviously really cool for the game, and as a user, I do want to compete against actual real-life footballers and influencers. But there's also an aspect of the best time to activate them, because even if we say had Messi on board, we wouldn't necessarily go about and shout about it all right now, because you go and announce that, you get loads of coverage, loads of people come to Footium, and then there's still only 3,000 clubs, and there's no sort of free-to-play version where they can instantly get involved with the game, or a kind of version of the game, and then maybe go into the Web3 version in future. So we also have to be strategic around when you activate things like that as well. But sadly, Messi is not yet involved.
I was going to say, you're leaking Messi, you're leaking KSI. Right, the next question is from Mozza. So after my semi-serious Scotland question, I still demand it, by the way, will there be an extended period of downtime between the final beta and launch? I'm concerned key aspects like cups, etc. have yet to be implemented and tested, and these could make the game act up. George.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think as I mentioned before, the hope is that the final beta before the launch will have all the features we want in for launch in and able to test and get feedback, and then we can tweak between going from the final beta to the launch. But that isn't kind of the final game, as after that we'll continue adding things, testing them before they're added, obviously. But Footium's is not a game where you release a new one every year like Footium 2022, Footium 2023. It's a persistent game, so we'll just constantly make improvements, add features that we test and know that the users kind of think will add value. So yeah, testing is obviously a big part, as you've seen, for us running many more betas than most other games do, or more, I guess, like alpha tests. But yeah. So yeah, in terms of this first bit of the question, in terms of extended period of downtime between the final beta and full launch, I wouldn't expect it, because we tend to have most of the stuff in the final beta. It's just like tweaking that. And if there's enough changes to make it a big downtime, then it probably wouldn't be the final beta anyway.
Cool. And the final question is from Jake. We saw a sneak peek showing stadium customizations. How far is this going to go, and how many different styles do you have planned for launch? Is it going to be Stadium Simulator, George?
I do enjoy that aspect of the game. I've been working quite closely with Matthew, our 3D stadium designer, on it. But yeah, we've got some really cool stadiums coming up. We have intended at launch 5 different styles across 5 different sizes. And each club will be given a stadium at launch, which is based on the capacity, and then they have the option to improve that to a certain extent, but it means that if you have a Div 8 club with 1,000 capacity, you can't go and build a Old Trafford-esque fortress. It has to kind of come along with the club progress, but there are kind of an extent to which you can upgrade it. But yeah, some cool different styles inspired by real life stadiums, but in future we can also add some more kind of, I don't know, futuristic stadiums, bigger, smaller, different things like terracing versus seating, add directors boxes and stuff like that. So it's an area of the game which I think we can add a lot of creative aspects, and also we've been kind of working on how we show this within the game as well. So not hopefully just having a page where you go and view the stadium, but having that involved in the match page somehow eventually. So a lot of cool stuff in stadiums that we're excited to show you guys.
Yeah, that's.
I think
what were you saying? Sorry,
I was going to say there's been a couple of questions that come in during this. Do you want me to quickly rattle them off?
Yeah, rattle them off. Get them done.
Anyone else take them? So from Barracuda 34, player stats not affecting the game much. Defenders with 60 shooting, scoring. So this is due to the current match engine uses player ratings, not the individual player stats. If you go into the beta feedback channel, Questo asked a similar question, which he answered a couple of days back. But again, this is fed back to us by a few people that sort of the communication around what is and isn't active in the beta should have been better, and that's, as Jordan mentioned, something we're definitely going to improve moving forward with the betas in terms of versioning notes, etc. And similar with fitness, I think that was in the announcement, in beta announcements, that it's not acting as it exactly should. So that's something we've kind of been working on fixing internally, and will be fixed for the next beta. And deeper custom tactics, hard to put an exact timeline on it, but the intention is to have them in for the final beta and launch. Hibby announcing, laughing at my pronunciation of Nantes. Limited number of teams, how do we attract new players? So yeah, intention is obviously we want the game Footium to be played by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. So in future we will start expanding the number of clubs. The most likely way that will be done is through adding a Division 9, Division 10, and obviously the way that's structured means it scales quite fast without having to go to Division 200, which would be pretty daunting task to get from Div 200 to Div 1. So we have kind of solid plans around that. Obviously, in the past we talked about having different chains, which I think has been put on the back burner for now just because of the infrastructural task that would be. So probably not something we'll pursue actively for now, but potentially in future. It's an interesting idea. Selling clubs and players work after the game launches. I don't know if you want to take that on, Jordan. If you're so after launch, if I buy a club, will it come with the players if they're minted as NFTs, or we have to like bundle them together as a user?
Sorry, just finding this question.
I can take it. So basically, the way we've structured the smart contracts, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan, is that the clubs, kind of the players are owned by the club smart contracts. So if you sell a club, all of the players will move with that club.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, that's exactly right. All of the clubs. So just to go into a few technical details there, each club has its own escrow smart contract. So that means that contract can own NFTs, and it owns the player NFTs that belong to that club. And when you transfer that club, basically the club NFT itself is kind of like a key for allowing the owner of that club to perform actions on behalf of the escrow contract, which owns the players. So yeah, it's all bundled in.
Sounds very complicated. I like it. And the last one was from Brains. When will all of the hidden, unreleased Div 3-4 clubs be released shown? You can actually go and find them all on the footium.club/Ethereum. They'll just say unclaimed. So if you want to go and have a look, I think that's how Whitney Town was found, because Jekim said that it was the best badge in Footium, so we did a giveaway for it, and then Questo won it. And I don't think Jekim's ever forgiven Questo. But yeah, if you want to go have a look, have a look. And
yeah, you just like through the club IDs from, I think you just go from 1 to like 200 or however many Div 3, Div 4s there are, 160. I don't remember off the top of my head. But you can see all the different badges that are yet unreleased. There's some very cool bespoke ones that I'm excited to get out there. So keep an eye on that.
Some exciting partnerships that some are lined up for already. Obviously, Zedrun are taking one. and some more, which we won't give any more information on, but soon. And Brains is typing in no Wembley Rangers badge though. But Wembley Rangers is getting a badge upgrade. So that's very exciting. Awesome. Well, that's all of the questions. Thanks to everyone for asking them. Thanks, guys, for coming on for the full hour. This is going to be This has been recorded and it's going to be uploaded to our YouTube tomorrow if you want to catch up on anything. But yeah, thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for coming, guys, and have a good evening.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Cheers for all the questions.
Cheers.
Hey.